video, we are going to take a look at 7 Xbox controllers. These are all original. Of course, this one I already worked on a little bit. And as you can see at the numbers on the controllers, I already diagnosed them and basically figured out what is wrong with them, or what is likely wrong with it, since I have never worked on Xbox controllers before. Not in terms of repairing anyway. I've only taken like 2 Xbox controllers apart ever. And I think I paid 150 euros for everything, which is very expensive. But unfortunately I had to import it because, well, I cannot really find these type of deals in the country I live in. So I had to look overseas for this. But I think it was still a good enough deal that I could make a profit out of it. So that's why I decided to buy it and already diagnosed it. And I also already have some replacement parts in place, which I noticed, which I thought may come in handy when repairing on these. So let me take you quickly to what is wrong with each of these controllers. So let's start here with, well, controller half number 1. And this controller had a faulty X button, and I have already worked on this. I have already replaced the thumbsticks and taken the shell off, which was broken. This was originally also a white controller. And yeah, the X button, as I read on here, wasn't working. And what I ended up doing is very simple. I just cleaned the rubber pad which sits under the X button and also the contact on the motherboard. Both seemed a little bit dirty. This controller was pretty dirty, so yeah, there was quite a lot of dirt on the motherboard, and it must have gotten in between the rubber and the motherboard contact. So I cleaned that thoroughly with some isopropyl alcohol right here, and that basically fixed this controller. Well, half the controller. So yeah, basically this is completely working, but yeah, it just needs a shell. So what I may do is, if a controller has a lot of problems with it, I may just swap it with this known good piece, so that I at least have one working controller already, and then I will just work on the motherboard later. But yeah, that's what was wrong with this one, but it's now working. And here we have controller number 2, also pretty dirty. This did come with a third-party back piece. And what is wrong with this is that the USB port on the front makes a bad connection, and that the A button is basically permanently pressed in. Maybe you can see it on camera, but yeah, nothing is happening in comparison to the other buttons. So basically it doesn't spring up anymore. So I suspect that the rubber piece under these buttons is faulty, or has a tear in it. So I suspect that if I replace that, it might solve the problem. And for the USB port, it may be very dirty, just like the rest of the controller. Maybe there is a fault on the motherboard. I guess we can just go from there and figure out what's wrong with this one. And here is controller number 3. I don't need to tell you what is wrong with this one. Basically, the top piece of the analog stick is completely gone. I'm going to grab a comparison of what it is supposed to look like. So basically, the stick is supposed to have a piece that sticks out so that you can put a cap on there, like the thumbstick. And here that is completely obliterated, so it's completely destroyed. So of course this thumbstick needs to be replaced. But besides that, there was more wrong with this, which I should have written down on this little card. I said that basically this button is very squishy, so it's not nice and snappy like this one. But it's basically, it seems like there's a lot of dirt around the button, which causes it to not spring back and forth properly. And this one also has a problem with the USB port not connecting normally. So it will come on for a second and then it will disappear again, and that basically goes on like that. And yeah, this USB port looks visually in a lot better state, so it's not very dirty. So might be a motherboard problem, we will see. Here's controller number 4. I mean, yeah, the thumbstick are obviously basically completely chewed away by something. Maybe a dog got the controller in hands. Again, a third-party back piece. And this controller has not been opened before, which is always a good thing. And it says that I do not get any connection via the USB port, so maybe it's a common problem with these controllers, that the USB port just does not seem to last that long. The USB port is in a bit of a rough state, so it might need replacement, but yeah, again, we need to do a motherboard inspection on all of these. Let's see if we can figure out what is wrong with it. Of course, it could also be maybe battery contacts. Nah, not sure. I think we should get a connection to the computer without any battery connection, so maybe a USB problem. Then controller number 5. I may have misnumbered from here on, so I don't think there is a number 5, so let's go on to number 6. And yeah, there's definitely something wrong with either the thumbstick or the analog stick or both. It doesn't want to snap onto it anymore, so I think something has broken. And if you look on the contact, on the battery contacts, you can see a lot of corrosion, or a lot. You can see some corrosion here on the minus. On the other side, it's not as bad, luckily. So I'm not surprised if there is water damage inside of it. And this controller has double stick drift, and the LT and RT buttons, which are the back buttons, they don't have any response. So pretty interesting. So you have two controller number 7s. I will just go to this one. Controller number 7. Well, obviously thumbsticks are not in good shape. I have no idea what Xbox version this is. This is original. Again, a third-party back piece, but this is definitely original. I do not know what edition controller this is with this chrome-like Xbox button. But yeah, visually the battery contacts are a little bit rough, but do not seem to have any corrosion. Oh yeah, here you can see the problem. The USB port is completely missing. I don't hear anything, so it may have been completely torn out. And yeah, of course, I cannot test this without a USB port, so I will try to replace that. Hopefully the motherboard is not in very rough state and we do not need to do a lot of trace repair. But yeah, that's wrong with this one. The USB port is completely missing. And then we move on to officially number 8, but here I've written again number 7. And this is a red Xbox controller. I think this may be a version which they released later on in the Xbox One cycle. And again, it's never been opened. Of course, the back piece is missing. I have a replacement one. I also got some thumbsticks just in case, but it may be a little bit different color. Well, it's not too bad, I think. It's a little bit of a rough state. I think it's definitely usable. But I thought just in case I'd get some replacement ones. May very well keep these ones on. So here's the back piece. I think it's a little bit too red if I look at it, but I think I can get away with it if I were to get this working. I mean, it was cheap enough that I thought I'd already pick it up anyway. So it's not the end of the world if it doesn't match 100%. But yeah, let's see what was wrong with this one. So I've written down that the LT has no response, so that's this back button. So maybe something wrong with the actual button that receives the input. And if I can fold this open, yeah, it seems like the left thumbstick has some minor signs of stick drift, so it's definitely starting to go. Oh wait, I'm misreading this. Yeah, it's the thumbstick that is a little bit worn, so again, that's why I got the other replacement ones, but I may keep this, maybe not, but yeah, it's not a long one with this. But we definitely need to open it up and see what the LT problem is about. Then last but not least, I have number 9, and grip on the back is definitely a tough condition. So if I'm not able to fix any of these, I can definitely just steal the right grip, so to speak, to replace this. Also not been opened before. The contacts are a little bit rough. It's maybe early signs of corrosion, not sure. It's a bit of a tough condition. It's definitely a well-used controller. And according to the post-it, it doesn't have any response on the USB port. And yeah, it's definitely in a bit of a rough shape. It's a little dirty. Definitely a well-used port, so it may have had a lot of abuse with the plugging in of the USB cable. So again, we will just look at the motherboard and see if we can figure out what is wrong with this. There's definitely a chance that I need to make a two-parter out of this if I can't manage to have a decent recording time on this, because my computer doesn't really like very long recordings. Yeah, now let's say 7 controllers which we need to work on. Let's just start with number 2. Okay, so here we are back with controller number 2, and as you can see, I just skipped to the whole taking part. So here we are already at motherboard level, and yeah, as you can see, if you look at the shells, very dirty, so that will all be cleaned off camera. I will also be sure to replace these thumbsticks, so because now these are basically very worn out, so I will take care of that as well. So let's start with the A button being pushed in. I just took this rubber pad off, and here we can already see the problem. Basically, this middle piece, which is supposed to function like this, it's supposed to be like springy, if that makes sense, and it has completely fallen off, so completely worn out. So we will need to replace that. I have replacement parts of this, so that should resolve our A button being pushed in. So that should be fixed. And then of course we have the USB port, which basically has a bad connection. So sometimes it connects, but if you wiggle the port too much, it disconnects again. But it's pretty filthy. If I now hold it under a bright light, yeah, it's very filthy, and it seems maybe like this has suffered some water damage. I think it's a little difficult for you to look inside the port, but yeah, it does look like it has suffered some kind of moist damage to my eye. So I think that we are best off to replace the whole USB port, just based on how it looks. What I can do is test there are 4 pins. Yeah, there are 5 pins which are located right here, and they all go somewhere on the motherboard. What I can do is test that first to see if the USB port actually goes where it's supposed to go. So now I will put my multimeter in continuity mode, which is the mode that beeps, as you maybe can hear. Fortunately, I cannot really put it inside, but I will let you know if I have a beep or not. So one of these should be ground, so I think I will try to find that one first. I think it's the pin completely to the right is ground, so that is fine. So now let's test the other pins. Let's see where this goes. Or maybe it goes right here. Cannot really see it properly. Okay, let's start on the left, because I can see that this one goes to the big capacitor. Yeah, that is correct. It was correct. Okay, yeah. So the pin completely to the left is fine. I have no idea what it is. based on the thickness of the trace, I would say it's a power trace, but not sure. Okay, the second pin from the left. I'm sorry if this is not captured on camera properly. The pins are basically almost stuck under the USB port, so it's very difficult for me to see and even more difficult to get it good on camera. So apologies for that. Okay, the second pin from the left should go to this resistor. Okay, that is correct. Then the middle pin should also go to a resistor to the right, so basically right here. It's also correct. And then the last pin, I cannot really figure out where it goes because there's some text written over here. But I think it goes to right here. Yeah, okay. So at least we can confirm that the traces themselves are working as it should, which makes sense because I do get a connection sometimes, but most of the time it just instantly disconnects. And yeah, basically due to the damage visually on the port, I really do not want to reuse this, so I am going to replace it. I think for the sake of a long-term fix, it's the best to do that. I just need to figure out how I am going to get this off, because when it comes to USB port replacements, I've only ever done them on PlayStation 3 controllers, and there it's possible to heat it up from the underside. And those USB ports are also through hole, so it's easier to heat it up from the underside and then grab it from the top. The problem here is if I go to the underside, where you have basically the ground connected, there's a diode right here and lots of plastic pieces around it. So I think if I'm going to heat it up from the bottom, I might destroy some components right here, and I do not want to risk that. So what I think I will do is to basically desolder these ones with a soldering iron. Yeah, to desolder this one with a soldering iron, and then heat it up from the top to get the USB port off, because like I said, the pins are basically tucked under the USB port, so it's very difficult to get a soldering iron in there. So, and it doesn't really matter if the USB port melts, because I'm going to replace it anyway. I will show you the replacement ports. So they should be correct, but I just want to double check if it's the same. So here you can see how small the pins are which connect to the motherboard. I'm not even sure how I'm going to get it on. I hope I can solder it actually, because I do want to try and use as less heat as possible. I will prep the pins at least, so it will hopefully be a little bit easier to connect them to the motherboard. So I will put some flux and solder on here on these 5 pins. But yeah, it's basically is exactly the same, so this should be the correct replacement. And hopefully you can see here how much better this port looks if you only compare the top of the two of them, then you can see how worn out the other one is. But I will use a different tip, which is also something I want to mention, is when I took this apart and had to desolder the wobbles from the LT and RT and just the regular ones. I used this soldering tip, which I was using for a different project, and I accidentally knocked some components over because this is just the wrong tip for the job. So I will switch this one out for a different one I have, which is basically my to-go-to soldering tip, which is this one. This one has an angle on it. It is especially handy for very small motherboards like this one. So I will be switching this out. And then I will start with desoldering these ground holes. Then after that I will heat from the top and remove this USB port. Then I will place the new one in, and I will try to solder this with this angled tip, which hopefully helps to get this on as it should. So let's see how it goes. Okay, as you can see, I have prepped the area where we're going to work in, and I will put my soldering iron at around 250 degrees Celsius, Okay, this is just all going wrong. Nice. As you can see, we have replaced the tip to make my life a little bit easier. So let's reinstall this first. Okay, that seems to hold well. So yeah, 250 degrees Celsius. The solder on the motherboard is unleaded. So what I'm first going to do is get some leaded solder and basically reheat them with the leaded solder so that it's easier to clear out the holes. And I will do that with some solder wick. At least I will try that first. And if that doesn't work well, I can always go and get the solder sucker. Of course, you need to be aware that you don't burn the plastic with this, because that can also happen. And I think this is a pretty solid method so far. So you can see everything here is completely clear. I could try and get the USB out with the go to my hot air station, and I think I will do a temperature of also 350 Celsius with the airflow speed of 4 out of 10 to see if that's enough, and yeah, we will see how it goes. But it's also just experimenting for me, since I've never worked on a Xbox One motherboard before, so it might end in disaster, maybe it will work, not sure, but we will see. We'll also put some flux around the port as well. I will not put any leaded solder on here because I don't think it's necessary. I mean, the board seems to take the heat pretty well, so I'm sorry if the camera is blocked by my hot air station, but I will basically just be flowing around the hot air to get the port heat up on all the sides, and hopefully the port will get out like that. I think I'm going to raise the temperature a little bit to 375 to help the solder flow a little bit longer, because I noticed that it does want to go, but it doesn't keep the heat long enough on, I think. See, on the front it wants to go out, but the rest is not really ready, so to say. Okay, now it wants to go. Boom, there we go. So as you can see, we have kept all the traces in place, which is really good news. And let me see if I can show you a close-up of the old soldering port. Okay, now that I look at it, it seems that something got ripped off right here and don't seem to have some kind of trace going. I think it may very well be for some reinforcement of the USB port, because the ground lengths are mostly on the back of the port where the traces are not. There's nothing really on the front, so I don't think it serves a very important purpose in terms of traces and stuff, of carrying data or power. But now I think about it, I mean, the legs of this should connect these anyway, so it must just be for some reinforcement of the port. So I could also just put some super glue down here and then reinstall the new port, and then it should reinforce it perfectly fine. So I don't think it's needed to do anything with that, but I'm a little bit worried about this ground leg being so fragile. I mean, I need to get the solder off here, but I think that is going to destroy the ground leg here. I think the rest is fine, so that's the good news. Yeah, I will. Yeah, I'm just going to go for it. I will desolder the ground holes completely, and then we will reinstall the replacement port. I mean, even if we lose this ground leg, it should not be a problem. We can definitely reinforce the port other ways. So all of the ground holes are cleared now, so that's good. So I will just clean this up with IPA, and then we will pick this up. So the new USB port fits perfectly fine. I will put down a drop of super glue just to reinforce the front of the port a little bit. Maybe not everyone agrees with that method, but I think it's the most simple method. And relatively effective to get the port to stay down. You need just a little bit, just a drop of super glue. I will just install it and not prep it, like I said I would. See if I can get away with it. So that should sit into place perfectly fine. And the faulty component goes into here, a collection of many parts which I've worked on over the last few months. You can see lots of different parts in here which are all faulty. This is now part of the fallen parts. So now with this installed, the first thing I'm going to do is the motherboard does not fall out. Resolder the ground legs, and then after that I will look at the pins right here and hope I can just solder them down without much problem. Yeah, this is very straightforward. So that's done. And of course the motherboard was also done. Okay, so now we need to focus on the top pins, which is going to be the most challenging part, and maybe I will regret that I did not prep the pads like I said I would. I mean, I should still be able to install it, but yeah, it's a little risky. So we'll see if I get karma for that, for being a little lazy. I don't want to use too much solder because I can risk bridging all the pins together, and that's definitely something I do not want to do. I really hope that's good enough. Not sure. This is definitely where a microscope could come in handy, because it's very difficult to see if the pins are moving or not. Now, I think they're not really solid on, to be honest. So I will try again with some solder on the very tip of the iron. And now I think that all of them have solder on them. Just want to touch them up one more time. I think it is acceptable, but I will see if the traces are strong enough connected. Yeah. Pin to the right is good. The pin after that is also good. The pin after that is also okay. That pin after that is also okay, and the last one is also okay. So it should be okay. It should be good. The only thing I'm going to do is I will also put some soldering on the top of the USB port, just to reinforce it a little bit more, because it's a bit of a fragile USB port, and if I look at the design, and it may also be the reason why these ports seem to fail relatively often, at least based on the power of Xbox controllers I have right now. I mean, lots of them had some dodgy connections to them, so it may very well be that the USB port is also at fault in those cases. So that port should not go anywhere anymore. Just to be sure, I will check them again with the multimeter to see if we get the same readings as with the previous port. But I have a lot of faith that this is a proper USB replacement. I hope it will also fix the problem, obviously. Okay, so now that the USB port is cleaned, let's check if the traces are still fine. That's perfect. It's really good. I think it's even better than it was before, actually. That's good. That's good. Okay, that's connected to ground. Okay, yeah, now it's good. I think I was accidentally touching the outer shelf of the USB, so that's why it was beeping. But yeah, I think the connection is perfectly fine, which is good. It means it was soldered on correctly. And before I'm going to test it, because I'm assuming that you need both the motherboards of the controller to actually test it, although this one has the USB port on it. But what I said earlier, I messed up in this area. I don't know if it's visible to you. Of course, I put a lot of wet on it, but there are a few components here that are shorted together. A few resistors, I think. So right here, two components right here are shorted together, and two resistors right here. So what I will do for that, I will get the hot air station going, and I will put it at what, 250 degrees Celsius. That should be plenty for these small components. And I will make sure that everything is into place again before we are going to test it, because, well, I don't want to risk shorting out anything on the board, obviously, because there are not really any other problems, if I'm not mistaken. We took care of the A button, and we took care of the USB, and the rest is okay, I wrote down. So of course we do not want to destroy the motherboard by accidentally shorting things together. So we can quickly put this into place, and should not take too long. Yeah, it's perfectly fine. So it's not touching each other anymore, so that's good news. Very easy fix. It's also very hot, the motherboard. But here you can see that everything is perfectly fine. So this is now separated, and this as well. So that's good news. So I will put these two pieces together, and then we should be able to at least test to see if the connection of the USB port is okay. And as you can see here, I'm sorry for the audio. I need to do this to my mobile, unfortunately. But as you can see here, we are in gamepad tester, and this controller is perfectly fine. If I try to move the port around, so if I try to put pressure on the USB cable, it won't disconnect. And it's actually working, as you can see here. So I will give it a proper test when it's put together, and then we can go to the next controller. So you just saw the end result for controller number 2. And normally, of course, I would go to controller number 3, but I've been going to my footage and I realized if I were to put all the controllers which I've worked on, which is about half of them, if I would put them all in one video, the video will be over 1 hour long. And yeah, that's just, I think it is just too long for a video. And also, like I said earlier, my computer does not handle it very well if the recordings are too long, especially the rendering is a absolute nightmare. So as you can see on the screen, I have decided to make this a 2-parter and probably a 3-part series. So part 1 and part 2 are basically done, so hopefully I can upload those very shortly together. I still haven't worked on the other half of the controller, so I hope to get it done this month. I hope I can make time for that. I will absolutely try my best for that. So yeah, apologies for that, but I don't see a other choice right now. But yeah, at least thanks for watching this part of the video, and I will let you know in the comment section when the next part will be live. So I will see you then.